welcome to this second dialogue session with Alison, and this follows on the original EMCC Global Dialogue around factors to consider in team coaching. I know that most of us took part in May. So yeah, I'm Sue Featherstone, and with Nicola, hopefully we will kind of ensure a smooth running of the session for Alison. So just to kind of give you a bit of an insight for the session, what to expect, I think Alison's going to just recap on where all of this started, and also to take us through the map and how that's developed following our discussions in May and the insights that we had then. And then we'll be asking you to join us in the dialogue, and we'll go into some breakout rooms and think about how we might use this map in our professional lives, and in what way that can add to the work that we do. So without any more ado, I'm going to hand over to Alison, and there we go. Over to you, Alison.
Thank you very much, Sue, and Nicola, thank you. And hello, everybody. And I specifically do want to say hello to Jill in Australia. It's some unholy hour of the night there for her. And some of you will have met her last time. And so I'm sure others of you looking around geographically, I think most of you are in a fairly reasonable time zone. And for those of you who are not in England, it's 2 o'clock on our afternoon, and it's a glorious sunny day, and it's really lovely to be here with you again. So thank you for coming. I hope you've had a chance, and you'll have another chance to have a look at some of the result of our amazing conversation that we had the last time, which was so enriching for me, and I hope it was for you. And I hope, again, some new thinking and fresh ideas will come from today for you. So let me set the scene again, just a bit of a recap. That this map came out of a number of areas for me. One was my own fascination and passion around groups, and how powerful groups are, and how interesting and at times scary and unpredictable they are. So how do we keep track of what might be happening in a group setting? The next thing, of course, is what do coaches bring to supervision, and the recurring sort of umbrella in the context of team coaching has been, I don't know whether I'm making any difference. I don't know where it's going. I hope I'm adding value, but it's changed. The client asks for team coaching, but I'm not sure that they know, or I know what they want from team coaching. So there was something around how do we create some form of context in which this work is happening, given that having just finished a piece of writing around team coaching supervision, I'm familiar, as many of you are, that there are maps, there are frameworks and structures and models of team coaching that are becoming developed and becoming applied. Some of you have used them more, perhaps for longer than others, but at the moment it's still very much a place of change and flux. So part of my need, I guess, as a supervisor was in supervision to, with a coach, to say, let's have a look at what might be going on, and how can we track it, what's in the foreground, what is changing. So there was that aspect that led to me developing the map. Then the other thing that I touched on, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, and she's been working for a long time, not in supervision field, but the work of Nora Bateson. And I think the first time that Nora Bateson wrote of this was in around 2012. And you can follow her work in her field of warm data. And to me, I loved the idea. I went to a gorgeous 2-day workshop with her where we looked at the interconnection of what's going on when a group of people come together or not come together, or they're beside each other, or they're trying to come together or they're not. So I've been following her work quite closely because she enabled me to find a way of representing something visual that would enable us as coaches, supervisors, people accrediting team coaching, and academics to say, well, how do we know whether we're being able, whether we're being effective? And so that was the next piece in my how do we capture this? And for those of you who were at the last session, we had a lovely conversation about how do we capture the sense of movement and interaction and interconnection in a two-dimensional image that is static. And I still haven't cracked that one. So at some stage or another, I'm going to find a way of personifying this in a living organismic way. That means that we can have balls floating around and we can have avatars. And I couldn't remember the word for avatar last time, but somehow or other, I'm going to make this live in a different way. But this is, you will have remembered the first session we looked at the blobs, and they looked terrific to start with, and I was really thrilled with it. And everybody came, and my invitation was to say, okay, how does this work? And invited you all to have a look at some of the different blobs and what was germane, critiquing it, if you like. And so what I would now like to dare to do is share the product of our conversation and my thinking as a result of the input, the ideas, the challenges that you offered to me the last time. And indeed, there may be an opportunity for that this time, but today is less about critiquing the map and more about, well, how the heck can we use it? So let me pause for a moment and ask Nicola if she will put up the map that is now. So here we go. And just let me pause, and I hope you all had a chance for you to see it before. And let me talk you through how it's come to this point. And again, it's not complete or final, but I hope it has managed to capture some of the key ideas and suggestions that in our dialogue last time you came up with. Now, I hope, can you see my arrow? No, you can't. Okay, so let me create the context. So the first, okay, some of you can. So some of you may be able to see the arrow. In terms of the context, what I wanted to do was take the borders away from each particular factor, like leadership, like ethics, like culture, so that we could see that there would be a relationship and a connection between them, and a sense of the possibility of one factor influencing or coming into the foreground ahead of another. Or so if we looked at leadership, how might that be informed by the wider system? And if we looked at the wider system, what impact might that have on the coaches? So that was the first thing that I've wanted to change, so that there's a sense of movement and mobility. And I guess I describe those two things as different. So then those of you who may have really liked the blobs and their finiteness, this is a point that let me talk to you about some of the changes that I've made that were very significantly influenced by your contribution. So I'll start at the top of the page with the ethics and dilemmas, and the group that was working on that posed the question about what are some of the dilemmas that the team may have of an ethical nature, and what were some of the challenges of an ethical nature that the coach may have. Then there was a really interesting input, and I don't know whether Vanessa has made it yet, but Vanessa raised the question, perhaps from her group, around culture, which I really valued, around areas like the assumptions, the norms and habits, the ways of working and the patterns, which at first model didn't have anything around it, but I really appreciated Vanessa's and her group's input into, well, the culture can set this whole thing off hugely with areas like norms, habits, and ways of working. So we then went around to the psychological phenomena, and there's a link here, Martine, because that goes across to the team and the group development. And I didn't dwell on that or make any changes to the psychological phenomena, but I'm holding in mind that there is a connection then with groups and group process, which I've included over with the team and group development section. So we then look at the relationships and the interconnection there, in the team, beside the team, outside the team, and then into the progress reviews. And I think in the original map, I used evaluation, but I far preferred, again, I think it was Vanessa and her folks suggested, well, the next step is what's the direction of travel? Where are we going with this work? Where are we trying to help this team get to? Or where do they think they're trying to get to? And as a result, rather than an evaluation, I thought progress reviews manages to personify that this is an ongoing, evolving process with where are we heading? What are some of the success criteria? What is the purpose and outcomes that we collectively and the team is hoping to achieve? And what are the sustainable results that together we may co-create? So you can see already in that first half, already significant input from a number of you, and forgive me if I haven't named you specifically, because we then go on to this area that Michelle Morale was very interested in and contributed around the notion of collective intelligence and how that and the we of a team can actually be more powerful and influential than 1 + 1 + 1. So I've adapted the map and included collective intelligence as another factor, another theme or lens through which we can observe or look or consider what and explore what might be happening. We then go on to the coaching framework, and through other conversation, I've taken I've taken some of the people out of there, but I've added the whole notion of types and methods of intervention and what are the behavioral models that people might be working with, and do each of us as a practitioner have our own coaching framework for this work, which then leads us into the team and group development. And Martine and I have had several conversations over the years around groups and group process. So I wanted to take Mr. Tuckman off group development, and I'm sure all of you have been immersed in Mr. Tuckman with the utmost respect for many years, but Mr. Tuckman is a little bit dated now, and I wanted to add the group process, which in analytic terms or group analytic terms is absolutely so fascinating and challenging for those of us who may not have done much group work or our own development in group. So I wanted to include that, as well as the notion of teaming and complex adaptive systems, and then into the individual participants with their learning styles, stages of adult development, their team roles, and then curiously we then end up, or should start off, or could keep doing the contracting, defining the purpose of the work, who is involved in the contracting, and then the recontracting. And again, I'm mindful that in our dialogue together, several of you contributed to where does the contracting start or finish, and or how do we keep recontracting as the work evolves. And then that can be influenced, of course, by this whole notion of the wider system. And I guess I wanted to keep this timeless by not referring specifically to COVID, which is the time that we've had to do this work together. But of course, what is going on in the wider system that may be impacting on any team intervention that we may be involved with. So I feel as though I've done a whistle stop, and I hope I've acknowledged those of you I can, and sorry for anybody I haven't named specifically about the input that I managed to prompt my thinking in how this has evolved. But you'll notice then that I haven't yet spoken of the coach and the coaches in the middle. And when I originally set this map up, it was, well, if we put the coach at the heart of the work, where do they look? Where do they see? What do they see going on? And I had a very interesting conversation the other day with a colleague, and they said, what if you take the coach out of the middle? And it was too late for me to change the map for today. But I think there's something, of course, in supervision where the coaches and I can sit outside this and say, where do we want to look? Where are we paying attention? Where is our curiosity drawn? And how do we pay attention at any one stage in a project or an assignment, and pay attention and or respond to what may be coming into the foreground for the team and or for the coach or the coaches themselves. So watch this space. I may do another map later with the coach or the coaches out of the middle of the circle, but the fact that they're at the heart of the work is, I guess, informed because I'm a supervisor, and for me, what we do in supervision is create the conditions that enable them to look and to explore and to go wandering in this, my metaphor, forest of activity with all of these different elements that may be playing out at any given time in the process. So I feel as though I've done a whistle stop, but I'm looking at the time, and I would love to give you now some time to come together and have some conversations. Let me pause for a moment before we go into breakout. Nicola, perhaps we could take them out of the slide, and if anybody, I'm hesitating to suggest, but if anybody, if you would like to bang a question in there now, which we may come back to later, let me give you all a moment to do that, if anybody would like to. I won't respond now, but please feel free.
Great. There's some questions coming in, so we'll have a look at those during breakout. So thank you, and feel free to put some more in the chat and we'll pick those up. That's great. So Alison, are you happy if I kind of take us through the breakout process?
Yes, that would, yes, yes. Thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you. And I think for me, really interesting and also heartening to see that the dialogue that we're having continues to shape the work that Alison's doing. So that feels really positive. So we're now going to invite you to go into smaller breakout rooms. The aim is to try and have about 3 of you in a breakout room, because that feels like we can really have some constructive conversations there. And I think for me that the emphasis has changed, as Alison said this time. The invitation is to kind of not necessarily interrogate the map, but really start to think about how we might use this, how it might influence what we do in our professional roles. And I know that certainly I sit with a number of hats. I'm a practitioner, I'm a lecturer, and I'm a supervisor. So I'm kind of thinking, oh, I could use this in so many different ways. So the invitation, I think, is to really bring that dialogue around use. And I know that we've got some questions that you also might want to have a look at. And Nicola is going to magically put those into the chat so that you can access them when you're in your breakout rooms. Nicola, do you want to explain how that's going to happen?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Sue. So using the magic of chat, I'm going to put a link in there, and the link that I'm just going to put in is to a file in Dropbox, and the file will take you to, and so download it, I'll click on it now. It will take you to the map itself, but then also I've put a list of questions in there too, or Alison's put a list of questions in there as well. And I'll just show you that quickly, so when you see. So have a look at the map itself, and as Sue said, explore how you might use the map. There's just some trigger questions in there. Have a look at them when you get them, and have a chat in your rooms as well. So I'm going to stop sharing now because you should have a link there. Has everybody got the link? Is everybody okay on the link? Lots of nods. Perfect, perfect.
Right.
I'm going to stop sharing now. I'm going to open the rooms. And
Thank you.
how long are we?
So we thought we would just press pause from a talking point of view for a couple of minutes. First of all, I want to kind of thank you, because I know some people have put into chat, some people have already been putting into a Dropbox chat. So we'll ensure that we capture that as well along the way. But we thought we'd like to just invite you to take your reflections out of that discussion. And if you would populate chat with your reflections, some insights that's come out of that, perhaps what was the emphasis of the conversation for you. So I am going to be quiet, press pause, have peace and quiet for a couple of minutes, and invite you to download your thoughts into chat. Thank you. Okay, thank you all so much for that. That feels really rich, just allowing that time for everybody to download on there. And I'm scanning away thinking there's so much I want to bring my attention to there. So I think things that have just popped up for me, somebody's talked about freeze frame, a moment in time, and yet recognising that's moved on, a landscape perhaps rather than a map. What I'm noticing I'm drawn to, and likewise my blind spots. And I think others have said that that's really lovely to be able to potentially work with the team in terms of their blind spots as well, reflecting in practice and on practice. And I think a number of people have just said it, just recognition of the complexity of team coaching and the complexity of this world of working with teams. So that's great. And I love the idea. And I, as a practitioner, I actually can see myself using this actually with the team itself. And I think other people commented on that one. So people have talked about it being a corkscrew and onion layers. And again, in terms of how we use this in terms of internal supervisor as well. So those are just some of the things that have caught my eye as I've gone along. Alison, anything that's particularly caught your eye? And then I'd love to open it up to the rest of the group, and we'll go into a short period of plenary. So.
I couldn't, I started to giggle when when one group said, I know we weren't supposed to critique the map, but we couldn't resist it. And I thought, yep, okay. And maybe what this prompts for me is, yep, I can go away and I can do some more with this map. But actually my invitation is for you people to go and work with this and try it out and see how it informs when you're out there. And if there are bits that don't work, well, change them and adapt them, because that's what this work is about, isn't it? And I think the other thing that struck me is how with each of your different contributions that there is so much wisdom about this work, isn't there? Which lens do we look through, and whose theory or model or approach can really support one or another of us to be able to do this work that is so fascinating and exciting and unpredictable and messy and sometimes scary. So rather than drawing on saying this comment or that comment, Sue, which I think you've captured really well, thank you. I guess now for me in terms of this process is to say, go and use it, see what it's like, come back with suggestions or ideas. Yes, I'll play with this again, but let's hear from you about things that you would like to share with the whole group. As you know, we're being recorded. What may you have put in your chat that you would like everybody to hear? Put your hand up and we can bring you in. So yes, because you're on mute. So who'd like to add something that you may not have put anything in the chat yet? I'm looking for show of hands.
Amanda, yeah, Amanda, do you come in?
Yeah, it was useful to have that period of time for reflection. I was looking at the group chat, very similar sort of instances, and I described it, you know, somebody who has had some experience with team facilitation and team coaching, that for me, I sometimes feel like I'm a trapeze artist. You know, I'm hanging on to the edge and I let myself go. And this map is a very helpful, not safety net, but it gives me something to, you know, it's a guiding light, or it's a safety net to help me navigate, you know, when I come off and get back on again confidently. And when working with others, I think it's a very useful thing to say, oh, something's going on. Let's have a look at this and see if we can pick out what that might be. What are we noticing? So, and I did say in the team meeting, Alison, I think when we look at that, if we were to open up your brain, that's where you'd be skipping around from each of these. It was really, really interesting. It's very generous. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that want to build on something or something they've spotted would like to comment on? This is right.
Was there anybody who didn't come to the first session but may have come through to the EMCC workshop that I did? Tim, I know you were at the EMCC workshop where we did the case study. So I'm just wondering how this has landed for you, if I could invite you in.
Sure. I think it's a lovely, whatever we're going to call it, model or map or lens, and definitely helpful. I mean, in our group just now, we were saying it really makes us aware of the complexity, and for me it sort of prompted some sort of almost fear in some ways, thinking, gosh, you know, there really are a lot of things we need to be aware of, and that it's impossible and not desirable for us to have them all in our mind. We were kind of arguing for the benefit of the word checklist, and we sort of feel nervous about the word checklist because it sounds almost like it's too simplistic, but having a checklist, you know, before you go into a situation or after you come out of a situation, to think through things. So if you feel stuck or it's not working, and I think it's wonderful for that in terms of prompting us to think about different things. And yeah, we did look at a case study when we were in the EMCC global conference, and there it was very helpful. You know, in terms of the team that I was in then and the discussion we were having, it was really helpful. I think mostly in just and I think I like the word lens best, or series of lenses. So prompting us to think about a different lens, and a different lens to look at the dynamic we're talking about at that time. And in our group just now, we talked about the interrelatedness between them. So we started saying, well, should that one be under this cluster or somewhere else? And obviously it doesn't matter too much. And we noticed that some of the arrows were double-headed and some aren't. And we were thinking really perhaps all the arrows should be double-headed because there's so much interaction between the different things. And we almost saw it as moving, you know, like bubbles that are moving and growing. And so no, we found it really, really helpful.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else like to add to that? Yes, Helen, hi.
Hiya. Yeah, great, Alison. We talked quite a bit in our group about because there were 4 of us. For a few of us, that whilst incredibly useful to see it laid out at one level, really quite overwhelming. So I really relate to that. Oh my God, how many things have we got to attend to? But we talked a bit about the idea, and I know you love a card. I know you love a card. And we were just talking about the idea of cards that could be themed, you know, by, I don't know, I mean, there's all kinds of ways you could cut it, but sort of team, coach or coaches, organisation. And because so many of those aspects apply to all the main people involved, but almost something that then you can, rather than it being a list, it being a set of things that you can move around. So I think that's at play, and I think that might be at play. How do they relate? You know, so that was one of the ways we thought it might be more dynamic, and one could work with it in a, in a way that, whilst not 3D, I mean, sort of 3D, but you know.
That's lovely, Helen. Actually, if I can add to that, because what I haven't done today because of time and things was that to create an individual slide or a card, if you like, of each of the factors. So, for instance, we might take leadership of the team, dispersed, nominal, explicit, implicit, and that's a card in its own right. Then we could shuffle the cards and say, okay, let's draw a card, or let's put a card out, and which one is in the foreground and where might we pay attention. So it's a working tool that people can engage with physically as well as intellectually. So thank you for that suggestion. Yeah, great. So anybody else?
Jeremy, do you want to? That's great, thank you.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I mean, just thank you for the participation, whatever that word is, participation. And yeah, I was in Helen's group, and the cards definitely work for me. I've used cards a lot, and that was, I think, a good way to make it dynamic. The bit I shared with the group, which tickled me, was just running with this idea of a map. It really works for me as a map, and I need orientation in it, so to kind of reduce that confusion. So all those concepts of you know, where is north, you know, where is X marks the spot, you know, here be dragons, we thought was ethics, you know, so that was quite nice. And then the insight around the coach being in the middle, if you pull out the coach, then if it's a map, where would they be? And my thought was, well, the coach is the key of the map. So, you know, we're both inside the map, but also outside, and, you know, who you are and, you know, what is relevant for your key in your map is going to change depending upon who you are. So that might be one way of framing it. And that certainly kind of helped, you know, it was running with that metaphor, if you stay with the map metaphor, certainly.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think there's something there about the map, and I take your point about the orientation. We had a little bit of this conversation the first time round about where is north.
Yeah, and I think that was me again, so apologies.
Not at all. It's a case. It's, you know, we bring it back if it's meant to be there, don't we? There's something for me about the notion of map means that we're going exploring rather than we know what the direct A to B. And I guess this is my hesitation about calling it a model, because a model sometimes is linear and sequential and static, and we go from A to step 1, step 2, step 3. And there's something here that if it's a map, here's the territory that we're going to be working in, which route might we go, and what happens if we go down this path or that path. And in the conversation I was in the other day, we talked about, personally for me, when I was trekking, it was some days, you know, I was walked with people. Other days, you know, I walked at the back of the group, or I walked at the front of the group. And some days I had somebody help me carry my day pack, and other days my boots hurt, so I didn't want to walk anywhere. And so there's something about the whole notion of being exploring and traveling and slow, fast, flat, stopping, pausing, let's look at the scenery, to me is an important element of this contribution to the whole field, rather than this being the be all and end all of this is how we do team coaching, because clearly even with us as a group today, there's such experience and wisdom of how you're all playing with it, doing it, being productive, having fun, getting confused with it. So thank you.
Thank you. And Alison, I'm noticing, looking at the chat again, somebody said, if I'm using this map with a team, I might be inclined to put the team in the middle and kind of amplify, it kind of amplifies them and it's their work to do. And somebody else said, and I might put the leader in there depending who I'm working with. So it feels really flexible. So Kathy, I noticed you've got your hand up as well. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Thank you.
Jeremy knows how rubbish I am with IT. Jeremy and Tim were victims of it the other day. Just a quick point that came up in our meeting. I apologise for my movements. I'm stuck in a house in France, in a beautiful house in France, but I'm sitting with everything balanced on my knee, so I apologise for the wobbliness. One of the things that came up in ours, I was with Anna and Shona, was the idea that inevitably in the landscape there are so much that is also one-on-one coaching, you know, sort of a normal one-on-one coaching. And if this was to be used in either some sort of supervision, training, support, as someone who is entering into team coaching, actually in some way being able to highlight the elements that are specific, if there are any, but, you know, specific to team coaching, that might be quite a useful thing to do, because inevitably there's a hygiene factor in any model like this that is about coaching per se. And actually what we're talking about is very specifically team coaching here. And so why are we talking about it differently? What is it that's different? And is there a way? And I'm not trying to reinvent your landscape at all, Alison. I think it's fantastic, but I'm also overwhelmed by thinking, I'm actually doing this, really? I can't be very good at it because I've never worked in that sort of complex way. But anyway, something that highlighted the bits that are very specifically team stuff. Sorry, that was a big waffle. That's me done. I'll go back to my IT little cave.
It doesn't sound waffle to me at all, Kathy. And my invitation would be, why don't you differentiate which ones matter to you that distinguish the team from the individual? I'm handing you that. I'll hand you that baton, and I can
start to try and do it actually in our discussion.
I could hand the baton back to each of you. Which of this is present in your individual and what distinguishes? And that's a lovely invitation, because I might too look at it, and then I can take this mapping the dynamics of any coaching, and then I go global with it. I don't have a power complex at all.
And I was going to say, I'm really enjoying your generosity to kind of say, here's where it's at, and take it now and work with it and make it useful to you. And I know as a practitioner, I'm feeling really grateful for that, and kind of love the idea of perhaps moving different things into the centre depending on who I'm working with. So that's lovely. Have we got any other kind of comments or reflections? Because I'm conscious time is ticking by. Doing a quick scan. No, it looks like everybody's either put into the chat or put into the Dropbox chat. And as Nicola said, we'll make sure we bring all this together as we have in the past, and it's a document that then we can all kind of touch on. So, Alison, any kind of reflections for you as we start to come towards the end of the session?
I just feel very enriched and very privileged that you wanted to come and explore with me. And I realize for those of you who have done research, you would know the notion of my epistemology and ontology. Yeah, it's on my ontology and epistemology is that I'm a social constructionist, and I create my learning and my knowing through dialogue and relationship. So this originated, as some of you probably remember, with when Nicola came to me and said, would you like to do a webinar on team coach supervision? And I shook my head loudly and said, no, thank you very much. Because I don't find that an easy way, and I don't actually I find it very difficult to do that. And I get much more out of this, and the sense of fun, and nobody's got the right answer, and we can learn from each other and be curious. And I feel enriched by having you join me today from all sorts. I mean, Martine sitting in a car, and Kathy in France, and I know Mary's in Cornwall, and we had Jill over in Australia on holiday at midnight, and Tim and Tim certainly is in Turkey. Who else is in Turkey? Somebody else is in Turkey. I mean, isn't this just divine? And what a privilege. And so thank you all very much for coming and for your thinking together. And I hope your foursomes or threesomes seems to have been very enriching for you, and we'll copy it all and let you see what's available. And please stay in touch. You know where I am. I'm going on holiday. I'm not working in August. I am having some quiet time in August, and that feels thrilling.
I don't believe that, Alison.
And I may be writing something around this, something that'll be a blog or a paper that will integrate with acknowledgement for the enrichment that I've had from all of you. Sue, thank you so much for your facilitating and being my MC and engaging with folks and managing it. And Nicola, thank you. We had such fun. We had great fun last time with Colm, who's the bugger's gone on holiday. And so he handed over to Sue, so thank you. And we've had such fun putting this together and engaging you, and thank you very much for your thinking and participating, and I wish you all a lovely summer. may see you in September, if not before.
Can I add an EMCC global thank you to everybody as well? As Alison said, we had great fun designing the last one and this one, and working with Colin before and Sue now. It's just been fantastic. Thank you very much for your generosity of engagement and contribution. Yes. We were very clear that this would be one of those sessions where everybody would get something out of it. It wasn't, you know, it just wasn't just as Alison said, just a webinar. We wanted to actually further thinking in this really, really important area, and I know that everybody appreciates the depth of reflection that everybody's been contributing. So thank you from EMCC as well.
And I know that I can see a link from Nicola to a feedback form. So we would really appreciate if you do have a few minutes to fill that in. But otherwise, echo Alison and Nicola, thank you for joining us, and go well.